Thank you very much, Mr. Bird. We'll go, of course, Mr. Haase with the same question. Would you take efforts to continue funding S-chip legislation? 90 seconds.
No, I don't think I would. It's the same issue again. The federal government can't solve the problem. Schools, teachers, and parents, they need to work together in a team effort, and I say ditto to what Bob said. I agree 100% with everything he said, including we've got to keep the dignity in the family. The mother, the father, the big brothers, the big sisters, they all have to do well so that the child coming up under them has a role model to follow.
Okay, Mr. Haase, thank you very much. And we'll go back to Bob Bird. Do you support improving the child tax credit? If so, how would you do it? 90 seconds.
Tax credits are very attractive, of course, but tax cuts or tax credits without spending cuts are probably more dangerous than tax increases, because what happens then is that you have, once again, inflation. I'm going to tell you that there is one tax cut we all need to have. The Internal Revenue Service needs to go out the window. The 16th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is arguably illegally part of the Constitution. I first heard that about 25 years ago. It seemed incredible. And yet the books have been written. I am absolutely convinced the 16th Amendment to the Constitution is illegally part of it. As a result, as a U.S. Senator, I will go and have the audit that has been done unofficially by other researchers and discover that we never got the required 3/4 of the state legislatures to approve that Constitution. Philander Knox, Secretary of State, illegally counted states like Kentucky, like Minnesota, like Oklahoma as having approved that Constitution. So I'm all in favor of tax cuts and tax credits, but this is nibbling the edge. We have to get right to the root of this problem, and that begins with the communistic idea of a graduated income tax. We have accepted this as a premise in American society, and many people have finally awakened to the fact that this is a false premise, and as a senator, I will attack that.
Mr. Bird, I only wish you had an opinion. Thanks for that answer. We'll go back to Mr. Haase. Same question. Do you support improving the child tax credit? If so, how would you do it? 90 seconds.
Well, Bob is absolutely correct. And if I get to the U.S. Senate, the first legislation that I'm going to introduce will be to stop paying interest. Once that's done, right now we're paying interest on created money, money created out of nothing. And all of that interest goes, again, to central banks, Europeans, the same people, our forefathers came to this continent to set up a new nation. Once we do away with the interest, then there's no reason to have an income tax. And if we have no income tax, then you don't need to cut it.
Okay, and with that, we'll give each candidate for U.S. Senate 90 seconds for their closing comments. Why should the voters send you to Washington? Mr. Haase, we'll start with you. 90 seconds. Closing statements.
Well, I realize that one could say I'm not qualified. I've never run for office. But then David wasn't qualified to go up against Goliath either. I have a grown family. I have nothing to lose but my life. And I'm putting my life on my line when I take on the people that I'm taking on. And I would much rather it be me than Bob. Bob is certainly qualified to do this. The other two candidates that aren't here, I'm not so sure I could say that about. But if the people of Alaska send me to the Senate, I will do everything in my power to do away with this insidious usury that is slowly putting us into servitude. What most people don't realize is debt is money. Money is debt. If there was no debt, there would be no money. Now I know that sounds a little bit confusing to most of you, but if you go to my website, davidforalaska.com, that's David, F-O-R, Alaska.com, there's 4 or 5, and there soon will be 4 or 5 more videos. Some of them 30 minutes, some of them are an hour and a half. But they explain this issue very, very well, and I beg you, for the sake of your children, your children's children, and their children, go to davidforalaska.com and see these videos.
Okay, Mr. Haase, thank you very much. And Mr. Bird, you'll have the last word this evening. You have 90 seconds with your closing statements.
Well, the American economy is at the breaking point because of endless welfare and endless warfare. To ask for increased funding at this time, especially when people's savings, mortgages, and investments are at risk, is a guarantee that it will bring about the collapse of our economy. Socialism punishes productivity and rewards failure. We'll be heading the way of the Soviet Union, which found out that people cannot live this way unless we do several things and find the self-discipline to make the correction ourselves. One, it is impossible to be generous and compassionate with other people's property and livelihood. This is what all these federal programs do. Number two, the family unit is not supported, but is rather controlled and eventually destroyed by government welfare. And three, the 20th century saw an era where government elevated itself into a sort of godhood. We need to understand that some things government just cannot fix. We need a more humble government, and it will bring about a healthier and happier society. Subsidies are an opiate. They give short-term gain but long-term loss. I am offering the opposite. Short-term loss for long-term gain. And this is going to do more to help the poor and more to help our children, more to help the independence of the family than any sort of government welfare program. To ask the government to help us is like an alcoholic who believes that just one more bottle of whiskey will cure his drunkenness.
Mr. Bird, thank you very much. Mr. Haase, thank you very much. Good luck on November the 4th. Candidates tonight for U.S. Senate. And with that, I'd like to tell all the folks watching on the District Channel, thank you so much for watching tonight. Don't forget the election is barely a month away. Please exercise your right to vote on November the 4th, and please join us tomorrow night for the conclusion of this candidate forum. I'm Ty Hart, and from all of the volunteers and the sponsors, good night.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping